Well, happy Fly Friday, everybody, New Age nerds out there. How do you do? It is once again another Fly Friday 15 at around 5:15 every Friday to give you the update on flying cars. I am Sharon Cuttersmooth, EP Digital, the urban astronaut, founder of Nanko Aero, doing a lot of things, fly. I hate to overuse the word, but that is the word of pretty much this next century. Fly. Like when you think about it, and I'm gonna jump into the updates, but if you think about it, the age that we're in, a lot of people talk about, hey, the information age, we're in that. And I think we're well into the information age, but I think now that we're in that age, there's a lot of other ages too. Like, for example, there is the space age. And are we in the space age now? Sort of. But I think what's in between the information age and the space age? I'm gonna call that the fly age. I don't know. I'm gonna go ahead and say that because that's pretty much that space in between space and where we are today is pretty much getting fly. And that's where these urban air vehicles come into play. And every time I talk about, or we talk about these urban air vehicles coming into play, there's always the reference to the Jetsons. Now, the Jetsons was supposed to be, is that space age, right? Would you consider that fly age, right? So when you think about the Jetsons and when the Jetsons period is supposed to happen, what age is that? Well, I would like to let you know that little old George Jetson. Yes, I just got word this week that little old George Jetson, well, he's going to be conceived this week. Oh my goodness. So, but all right, that's George Jetson. He's not coming about until next year being born, little baby George. But that means Mr. Spacely, that means Mr. Spacey is already alive and here. That means we're in that age. The Jetsons' age has already begun. So when we talk about flying cars and is it time? Oh, yes. It is literally being conceived. And I look for, congratulations to that new couple out there, the Jetsons out there, building the families of the future, right? Because we are building the vehicles for those people of the future. Because George is coming. George and the rest of them is coming. A little jokey joke, but it's serious though. We're not in the space age just yet. So I'm going to call this next century the fly age, which was right after the information age. And the information age pretty much exacerbated the speed of technology leading into the fly age. I like that. And within that sky age, there is, or not the sky age, the fly age, there is sky freedom. So follow me here, with that sky freedom, what are you going to do with it? And that leads us into segment number 2. What to know when buying flying cars. That's always a tongue twister. What to know when buying flying cars. Yes, one day you might just buy a flying car. And the question this week that I have for you, well, you're going to want to know, how far can you go? How far can you go? How far can you go in your flying car? Yes, there's been a lot of, not really debate, but in everybody's different concepts got different methods of power, and that different methods of power leads to different ranges on various vehicles. Now, what is a good range depends on the person. For example, there are developers developing flying cars for Europe, developing flying cars for China. as well as developing flying cars for the Northeast America, right? The DMV or New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts area versus Orlando, right? Florida, which is flat, versus Texas, which is big and spread out, versus California, the West Coast, which is pretty spread out but pretty dense throughout the spread, right? So you're going to need to travel, depending on the area you're in, some various distances. But how far? Now, in Texas, we're in Houston, so we're pretty much developing for the Texas Triangle. And we'll go ahead and switch to the other picture right now so I can kind of explain that. But in the Texas Triangle, which is big, spaced out, you're looking at regional travel, regional mobility. And when you say how far do you want to go? Well, there's a big difference because, going across town is a good maybe 20 miles, but going across all the way, the suburb to the other suburbs, could be at 35 to 40 miles. Let's say if you want to travel cross county, a large county down here in Texas, that's about 60 or more miles, right? So on average, I've seen the 50 miles. I know the E-Hong has about 30, maybe 20 to 30 mile range on it. Those vehicles are made to get you across town, right? Maybe even only in downtown. But Lilium Jet, they're looking at 300-mile range for their type of vehicle. I think, maybe 150 last time I heard, but ultimate goal 300. And there's a reason for that 300. I know down here in the Texas Triangle, which is, pretty much the largest continental state, it is pretty spread out here. A lot of people don't realize that. If you've never been to Texas or Houston, it's not like the other areas. It's large. And that area from Houston to Dallas, it takes a long time. It is not close. Same thing with Houston and San Antonio. 300 miles. That gets you to another city down in Texas. But 300 miles in the Northeast, let's get to looking at the second picture here. That same 300 miles will take you from state to state. For example, going from D.C. to New York is the same distance as going from Houston to San Antonio. Now, that's crazy because that opens up. When you talk about, hey, the fly age, you can really move about, shortening those travel times to various areas, whether you want to live in the suburbs, you want to live in another county over. What does this urban air mobility, or what I would like to call, or prefer to call this, is advanced regional mobility. And that's ARM, A-R-M. But the acronyms get kind of crazy for different things. So we'll just leave it as urban air mobility, regional air mobility, flying cars, all of it. The question is, how far do you want to go? And that will kind of be the main question that we will leave off with on this Fly Friday. No, I'm not ending right here, but that'll be the main question. I want to, how far do you want to go? Are you just going to the next town, or you going downtown, right? As you're, Mr. Jetson, you're, the new grandson of the Jetsons, right? What do you think they're going to do? I really wonder. I wonder what you're wondering. I want to get that conversation started. So if you got a few comments, definitely put them down. A few questions, put them down there. But that's my question to you. How far do you want to go? Next section here. Who is flying today, right? Who's flying now? And there's a few companies out there flying. But this week, I wanted to do a little bit of focus on not necessarily who's flying now, but where can you fly now? And it's not in terms of flying your flying car in the city or, in your area, because essentially they're still under development. So as you're developing these vehicles, there's very few places you could fly, but one of them being a test airfield. Yes, Texas UAS Works. have launched their open, looks like nonprofit flying car testing facility up in the Dallas Fort Worth area. They have access to a very, very large airport, right? This is a regional airport, now only being used for UAS, that's unmanned aerial systems, technically drones, yes, but the emphasis is urban air mobility. And they have a vision, right, of bringing urban air mobility to fruition through this testing facility. And of course, they're going to add to it, to aid any developer on drones or flying cars or any other advanced mobility aircraft, right? But to provide a testing, an adequate testing facility so that these vehicles can really be, put to the test so they can really provide the benefits that we all have dreamed about. Going back to the Jetsons, yes, to make these vehicles stay in the air, there's going to be a lot of testing, right? Maybe research and destroy, and we don't want them, to be too close to anything, right? Especially when you want to try and go the distance. In testing the range on a vehicle, you're going to need a pretty big range. Texas UAS Works has a very large range. We're talking about, Texas is already big, but in West Dallas, that west side of Dallas, yes, he has access to all of that airspace. Nothing but nice, good old fly zone. I think that could, be made into a recreational event or something like, come fly Texas, for the first time. We'll look out for that. I like that. So last and not least, we're going to finish off this Fly Friday with update what's next with Nanco Aero. And, this video might just be the last video on Twitch, but it's not going to be the last video that we make. No, I'm going to start making more content, especially this week. We did some testing on propellers and everything, and some few things happened, and maybe that's something you would like to see of how are we testing our urban air vehicle, our flying car. You want to see it get built? Then we have created our Patreon to bring you along the trip with us as we're building ours, taking all of this information into context and building out our stuff. We're going to be making content and providing you with more content. So yes, in the link below the video, there's most likely a space and a link to take you to the Patreon, where these videos will continue live, as well as there will be recorded and stored in and only in our Patreon. There's a lot of other cool gifts as well, like the simulators over there, right? So you guys probably saw the simulator on the screen here sometimes. Yes, if you want to play it, looks kind of cool, want to play it, Patreon is where it's at. And we got a few other good doodads and information. Yes, the content will be on the Patreon. And for that, we'll conclude this week's Fly Friday with the urban astronaut, Shern Peters, Nanco Aero, coming at you once again with the weekly, every week, urban air mobility, flying car industry information. And that's all I have. Aim high, stay fly. Peace, people.